Sonic World DX is a feature-rich fan game with content appealing to the vast majority of the Sonic fanbase. Chao Gardens is a side mode that was introduced for Sonic Adventure that have gained a very large following, one of the largest subsections of the Sonic fanbase in fact, and one that has been pining for a new experience for years now, but Sega, although aware, refuse to provide. Sonic World DX features its very own Chao Garden, so considering with how starved we've been for a fresh Chao experience, how well would I rate it? Well, for starters, you'll gain access to one singular large Chao garden that is separated into segments that represent smaller gardens, some based on previous games and some being wholly original, with differing features like water or obstacles and trees. Within this garden, you can have up to 20 Chao, which is a nice number, although it is slightly below what Sonic Adventure 2 offered, where that game gave you 24 Chao split between 3 gardens. This one is just 20 but in one bigger garden. Still, the size can make it hard to find your Chao sometimes, so I recommend keeping a mental note of which gardens you've occupied, as loading into the game, the Chao tend to spawn where you last saw them, which means that as long as you remember that, you shouldn't lose them. You can still whistle to attract Chao in a nearby area to your character, and unlike the past, it's not dependent on if they like your character or not. They'll always come if they're in the range, though the range is not infinite, and if they're in a different segment, they definitely will not respond to your calling. In the Chao Garden, you get to raise Chao, and they start off in eggs, as you may expect from the past, which can still be hatched either by waiting or lobbing them at a wall. There is no option to shake them to speed up their natural hatch rate, but when you pick up an egg, it will tell you how many cycles remain until it can hatch. And there's a visual indicator of the egg shaking more and more when it gets nearer to the time of hatching, which was a nice inclusion, although I would have preferred being able to shake the egg to hatch it faster. With your Chao though, you'll be able to use the Chao transporter machine to name it, as well as access your inventory, which allows you to store items you don't necessarily need right now and wouldn't want to despawn, which is something you couldn't do in the past. This Chao Garden includes many of that sort of quality of life improvements. For instance, you can get seeds from the black market in Sonic Adventure 2's Chao Garden to grow special fruit with stat boosting effects, but the problem with that is not every fruit had a seed you could plant, and even the ones that did required your Chao to first unlock numerous tools in order to plant them. And there are only about 3 spots per Chao garden that could grow a tree. In this game, if you feed your Chao fruit, there's a chance any of them will leave a seed behind, and your player character can plant them anywhere in the garden and it will harbour fruit of that kind, which expands the mechanic that Adventure 2 began considerably. Another is that when a Chao is eating or asleep, walking near it will show you their status bar, which means you don't have to pick them up to either interrupt them or wake them up, which would have a negative consequence. So any sort of rough around the edges mechanics have been smoothed out in this Chao Garden for a better user experience. One of the best may be the fact that the hidden stats of intelligence and luck are now portrayed on the Chao stat sheet, and that any items that would increase those are also cleanly shown to you. Adventure 2 and the other Chao Gardens also had these statistics, but hid them from the player, which was a tad bit unnecessary, so it's nice to see them laid out clearly here. The point of raising your Chao, other than to just have them, is to enter them into the competitions of race and karate. I've experimented with some of them, the easier difficulty since the Chao weren't very strong at this point in time, and they're okay. The karate resembles Adventure 2's karate, but it takes longer. Everyone's health is a lot bigger than that game, and the stage is longer too, so ring outs are less common. Maybe when you're stronger and you're knocking each other 50 feet backwards, it's quicker, but the earlier karates seemed a little bit slow. The races, on the other hand, have courses based around swimming, running, flying, and power, just like in the past, and they have different levels of difficulty within that. They were okay. The problem is that there's no downside to cheering on your Chao for a boost in performance. In Adventure 1, the cheering mechanic was, well, it was really bad because random Chao, not just your own, would get the chance to be a boost. So if you just mashed the button, you'd be boosting all of the Chao, not just yours, but that's why you had to be careful. And Adventure 2, acknowledging that that was a terrible system, instead used a stamina stat, and you could use it as a boost meter whenever you wanted, but if it ever hit 0, your Chao would be exhausted and slowed down. In this game, it's more like Adventure 1, but your Chao is always the one you're cheering will boost, so you can just keep mashing it with no downside, and it lets you win races that you probably shouldn't have won, and kind of removes any sort of challenge, which, considering the reason you're raising your stats in the first place is to beat challenges, kind of counterintuitive. Speaking of raising stats, as I mentioned before, you can buy fruit in the Chao Black market that can raise statistics that they list. However, you can also feed them Chaos Drives from enemies you destroyed in the main missions to level up their stats. The Chaos Drives have more colours since Intelligence and Luck are now usable, but the problem is I think these colours are bugged out or not finished, because you can pick up grey drives but they appear blue, you can pick up purple drives and red drives but they both appear as this pinkish colour. There's some weird things going on with the drives. In fact, I'm not even sure there's a swimming Chaos Drive anymore, because yellow does stamina and I can't seem to find anything that does swim without using a fruit, so something might be going on with them. There's no animals though, which means that your Chao won't get any of the animal body parts alterations. And on that note, there's also no way of getting a Chaos Chao, because that required feeding them all of the animals in the game. You can't get jeweled Chao, and you can't get shiny Chao either, so mixing and matching Chao traits and genes is less in-depth, unfortunately. This is something that they state on their website, that this Chao Garden is not going to be as feature-dense as Adventure 2's, so it's not necessarily something to slight against the game at all. It wasn't the objective, but it's unfortunate because that added a lot to the cycle of Chao raising. Competitions aside, your Chao as characters or creatures and pets are also scaled back quite a bit from before. They will still emote and think and walk around and babble to themselves in the garden, but that's about the extent of their behaviours. There's no personality to influence different behaviours, and there's no secondary and tertiary actions they might take, like backflipping for fun. They all have the very same small selection of things they might do, independent of what they are and how they were raised. They won't walk until they have aged up, instead of being based on your run statistic, and I don't think they have character favourites anymore, where they might like your Tails but hate your Knuckles. If they do, I didn't notice it, because they would still occasionally run up to your character as if they like them and know them, even when I would switch characters to someone that hadn't interacted with them before. So unfortunately the Chao are a lot simpler, which can diminish the replayability of the garden depending on why you play it. And on their evolutionary standpoint, their visuals, the Chao still have hero, neutral and dark, and they can still be stamina, run, power, fly or swim Chao. However, they won't show the direction they're growing until they cocoon and evolve. Up until that point, they will just look like the default Chao. Same goes for their alignment. There's no indication visually on if they're going to be light or dark. Instead, you need to rely on a heart counter at the bottom, which, until I had Chao go into their cocoon state, I didn't realise it was to do with that and not their happiness. So that's something to be aware of. They also won't undergo a additional change after they've cocooned, unlike in the normal game, which means that if you raise your Chao in a very similar way, unfortunately here they're going to look near identical. The one thing Chao can have different is their facial features and the state of their emote bubble, but that's it. The only other thing you could do is buy accessories to put your Chao and wear them, which also come with a status boost, but the problem is that requires intelligence level 2 to wear them. No, intelligence level 4 even. so you'll need to do a bit of raising if you want to do that. There are a few issues from a technical standpoint as well. Sometimes your Chao, instead of moving around like they usually do, will do so in a sort of frozen flight position. And when they're idling, they'll be drifting for no reason on the ground gradually as well. If your Chao is showing signs of this illness, be careful about feeding them any chaos drives or fruits, because what ends up happening is they will continuously, repeatedly, every second, act as if you've just given them something, raising their happiness and their affinity for your character's alignment rapidly, making a lot of noise, but they won't actually consume the fruit. And when you pick them up to snap them out of it, the fruit or chaos drive will sink into the ground, never to be seen again. This can be useful if you want them to be a hero or a dark Chao, or you just want their happiness to go up. But other than that, it means you can't raise their stats until you leave the garden and come back. That is more common than you might think, so keep an eye out. Still, the fact that they added a Chao garden onto this fan game was already a very nice gesture, and they did put the effort to model the Chao and give them the transformations that are in the game. You can still get the mono-coloured Chao as well as the mixed hybrid coloured Chao, so there are other ways of getting unique looking Chao. It's not like they're all gone, and the races do get progressively harder, even though you can still abuse the cheering mechanic. It's nice that it's here, and it's definitely something you can visit once every so often, but since the features that add the depth are absent, it may wear thin rather quickly. If they were to come back to this Chao garden, because I don't know if they ever plan on updating it with the rest of the game, but if they do, I think what would be great is if they could remove the bug I mentioned where they just indefinitely eat the same thing, as well as change something about cheering in races, and I think reducing the HP of the Chao in karate or shortening the stage so that ring outs are more possible would also go a long way in making them feel better. Of course, I would also love to see things like Chaos Chao coming back, animals coming back, more evolution, stuff like that, but I understand that would require a whole lot more modelling as well as logic on how the game understands Chao evolution, and that's not the point of this game. This is just an additional feature, and under those circumstances, you can look at it, I think, a lot like the Tiny Chao Garden. It's got more features than the Tiny Chao Garden, definitely more to do in there, but it's not as big a deal as the Adventure 2 Chao Garden. If you do play this Chao Garden and it leaves you wanting more, I would have to recommend that you pick up Sonic Adventure 2 and then mod it with Chao World Extended, which brings a whole breadth of new features to the already massive Adventure 2 Chao Garden. But this game is not a bad way to play Chao if you don't have any other means to do so. Thank you for watching this video all the way to the end. It really helps out the channel and lets me know that I'm doing something you're interested in. If you have any recommendations or things you would like to share, then please leave a comment down below. I hope you have a great day, and to see you next time. This is the Mighty Emperor, signing off.